Welcome to Cross Platform Podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I am Augusto Pinot, and you all know Art Gelwix, apparently.
Oh, he's being a smart aleck for pre-show. All right, fine. Yes, I'm Art Gelwix. This week, or this episode, because we never seem to get these exactly on weeks. This episode, I just kind of wanted an opportunity for the two of us to get up on a soapbox a little bit and talk about if you, as an individual or business person or whomever, is going to engage a coach or a consultant to help you with something, whether it's a specific project, whether it's improving your business, whether it's getting your personal life organized, whether it's whatever. What are the five things that, Augusto, you and I have seen over the years that if we could prepare someone who's going to work with one of these professionals uh, so that they get the most out of that relationship that they're about to pay for? So, no real structure to this, but we're looking for like our top five tips on either side. I'll let you start. What's your first tip to somebody
So,
who's going to engage a coach
I'm
or a
going to make a
consultant?
distinction in this one between when I have hired those consultants and coaches, and for me or for my
Hmm.
business, and when I get hired as a consultant of the coach for that.
Well, this is
Okay.
specifically about that second case. You, as the coach or the consultant, what's the wisdom you would impart on someone who is hiring you to get the
Okay.
most out of that relationship?
So the first thing, and is where we spend most of the time and what caused most of frustration for clients, is that clients misunderstood what gets to define what we are trying to accomplish. So, for example, hey, my email is out of control. Okay. And on the prospect mind, the client mind is I want email in control. But email is out of control because you have a series of habits that are taking that email out of control. And we need to uncover why and how these habits were created so we can change them. And that takes time. And clients sometimes think, oh, well, I will hire this consultant and in a week my email will be in control. No, that's not how it's going to happen. So that's the first one is define realistics, okay, of how long it's going to take to work and how open are you as a client to work with this. In the case of the email, it's easy to say, but as a consultant, a coach who work with getting things done, who work with rapid planning method, okay, there is a lot of mindset that need to change. Not in vain, I joked and that the GTD or even the RPM, okay, the rapid planning method, both are what I call the counterintuitive nature of those things. And that's where we start. Understand and realize that these changes are possible. Yes, but they are not intuitive. If they were intuitive, you will not need me and you will not need David Allen to write the book or Tony Robbins to write to create the other system. You will have done it already. So you need to remember these things. They are little things. They are not big. They're little things that you need to realize and understand. And in my experience, most people don't play this. They think, oh, well, I read the book, could not apply it, but I'm sure if I hire the consultant, I will be able to do it in a week. Nope, it's not going
That's
to happen. Time is
that
the biggest thing that people underestimate.
definitely a good observation. For me, the first recommendation I have is to think about what you want, not just what you don't want. So, for example, if you're hiring a consultant to help you solve a problem, and you're going to sit down with that consultant, it shouldn't be a lot of, well, I don't want this to happen anymore, I don't want that to happen anymore. You have to think about the do's as much as the don'ts. uh, this often becomes a situation where a consultant will start making recommendations, and as the recommendations come, it's like, well, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to do this. That doesn't move the ball forward. There is no progress made if you're just spending your time shooting down things. You have to be very clear and cognizant before you even bring that consultant in your door, about what you want to accomplish. What's the big win? Don't worry about the little details. That's why you're bringing the consultant on. But the big win that you're trying to get to, which is similar to what you're describing. This is this is a critical thing. Now, I'll talk a little bit later on about how that big win may change, but right off the bat, as I said, think about what you want as well as what you don't. Both sides create that set of information that's going to help that consultant for you. All right. So what's your number two?
Oh, my number two was exactly that. You need to know what you want. And like you, I get into a lot of these calls. Well, what do you want to accomplish with the email? Why do you care that the email is in control? Okay, let's be honest. There is people who has 20, 30, 50,000 emails unread. Okay, and they don't care. It's fine for them. So why this is important for you? Okay, and these things are difficult sometimes to define. Okay. And again, goes back to number one. When in doubt, go to number one. Okay. You need time to realize this. Remember, when you hire this consultant, you are hiring this consultant because there is something that you have not been able to figure it out. Okay. This is not that you wake up one day and say, oh, email is out of control. Let me hire a consultant. No. Okay. You already have tried to figure it out this. And what you need is some outside perspective. That bring me then to number three. Number three is, how open are you to these changes?
Yeah, this is really a key aspect for it. The number two for me is remembering that this is a two-way relationship that you're dealing with. That consultant's value is, in my case, for example, I bring 30 plus years of IT and business background to the table. You being the client brings your experience and knowledge with your business, your problem, your activities. Both have to contribute to this conversation, which means that this conversation, kind of 2A for me, is not about validation. So many people will engage a coach or a consultant to validate their own preconceived notions as to what a solution is. Or they will be saying, hey, here we go. This is the idea I want to implement. How do I implement it? Without ever validating, is that idea even applicable to the problem that you're trying to face? And they get bent out of shape when they say, well, wait, no, this is what we want to do. You're going to tell me how to do it. And they won't listen to that coach or consultant when they turn around and say, yeah, but you really don't want to do that. There's no reason to do that. You have to consider this an equal relationship from the beginning. If you're going to take a back seat, or you're going to make that consultant take a back seat, you might as well not engage them, because you're not going to get the value out of that relationship that you want. So it's definitely a two-way interaction. All right. So number three, you started talking about number three.
Number three is, how open are you to this change? Okay. Because I have come into coaching relationships, into consulting relationships, in which you go there, and when you start working, you identify, you even at the first point, when you start identifying the problems, like, oh, well, but I don't want to change that. Okay. And if we are not going to change anything and we want to expect a different result, that qualifies into what Einstein used to define as insanity. And I wish to tell you that doesn't happen, but it does. Okay. I have had clients where we have to start working and it's like, oh, yeah, but I don't want to change that. Oh, I don't want to do it that way. I'm fine that you don't want to do it the way I'm proposing. But if you want to solve the problem doing exactly the same thing you have been doing before you hire me, it's not going to happen. So that's my number three. You need to
Yeah,
be open to that change.
that's absolutely a critical piece. I mean, all the advice in the world is useless if you're not willing to at least consider it and look at its impact and ramifications. Number three for me is actually a more of a detail level thing, but I think it's really important about setting expectations. And it's that discovery doesn't always turn into deployment. if you're looking at most projects, especially when you bring in a consultant or a coach to help you with the project, you're going to start at the very beginning with a discovery phase where where that consultant is trying to learn all the details as to how you got to where you are and what are the capabilities you have to moving past that point. There's a lot of things that get discussed during the discovery phase. There's a lot of ideas that get thrown out. There's brainstorming sessions, there's ideation sessions. And I find so often that clients can get hung up. They hear something that to them sounds like a great idea. Hey, that could be amazing. Let's do that. Without understanding that every idea that is adopted into this evaluation process has to go through that whole evaluation process and may turn out to be a non-viable idea. Just because there was enthusiasm and energy around it during the brainstorming session doesn't mean you can actually do that thing. And you have to look at all those pieces. This is why I think it's so critical to rely on your coach or your consultant to do the what ifs for you. Allow them the time to go through and look at all the edge cases and find out why this grand idea may not work. In some cases, they're going to go through the whole exercise and say, yeah, this is great. Should not be an issue. We should be able to roll with this. But in other times, they're going to turn around and say, yeah, but you need to think about this, and this is a what if. And that discovery process increases the chances of success exponentially if you're willing to allow them to think through that entire cycle. So just remember, a good idea doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hit the ground and actually be done. All right, number 4.
Number 4 for me is who is going to be affected by this change, positive and negative, because not every change, regardless how good it is, it's going to be affected positive. One of the things that we see a lot with people productivity is, okay, you work with me, you implement GTD, you polish your GTD, you get it to the next level, and now you discover the people around you didn't. Okay. And even that the effect for you has been incredibly positive, the effect for the rest has not. And I remember a story with a client where this client bring a problem to the table and we were discussing the problem and I proposed a solution and the client told me, oh no, that will not work. And I look at them and say, why would that will not work? And he said, well, because the people who are involved in this issue are much better at dealing with email than myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if I deal this with email, they will beat me to the punch every time and it will not work. So, and that is sometimes as consultant, you discover, okay, so it should be working to the email. And in this particular client, he told me, no, I'm okay being 3 days late with the email. He was completely comfortable with over 30,000 unread email. It was okay. But it was very important to bring this point number 4, who is going to be affected positive and negative, because even that our work have affect positively so many things. Okay. The next step, okay, he was completely uncomfortable because he knew that he could not manage email as fast as the other people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no real question in my mind with that one. Number 4 for me actually kind of dovetails into yours. Um, the acceptance and acknowledgement of the fact that change management is part of the process. So often a recommendation will be made to say, hey, change this, do this. And for an individual, it's more of a make this change in how they function. But when we think about change management as part of the entire process, it's not only implement the change, but it's monitor and evaluate the change that's been implemented, go back and review it after the fact and see if the change needs to be changed. But so often, especially in businesses, they want to make a modification, they want to update a process, they want to see an immediate impact for something, and they don't think about the time it takes for those changes to actually be absorbed by individuals and by an organization. Great example of this I did years ago. We had a deployment I was doing. It was a new application. nothing particularly fancy, but there was a team of 10 people. And the executive in the conversations kept talking about how we'll deploy this to my team, we'll train my team, we'll roll this out to, and I said, hold it. How big's your team? He's like, 10 people. I'm like, well, then that means that you have 10 people to walk through and monitor through the change management process. Let's restate this just so we understand the scale of what we're talking about. You're going to roll this out to 10 people. You're going to train 10 people. You're going to support 10 people. And when you start to understand that scale of what change management truly kicks into, then you start to think about, okay, do we want to do something this big? Is this a change that is going to go off the rails just due to its own scale and size? So understanding change management is a critical part of any change. Really can make that difference, and accepting that in the beginning. All right, number 5, our big number 5 here.
My big number 5 is identify what is your main device. Yes, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the coach or the consultant, but it's key. Okay, and if you go right now and say, okay, my main device is a Windows machine, it's a Windows laptop. I am not your coach. Okay, why? Because my main comfortable device are Apple devices, are the iPads. Can I use do I know how to use that? Yes. Do I have coach people on them? Yes. But you will get much farther with somebody who understand details that I don't know because I don't live every day on that platform. And I will tell you an example of this, or two examples of this. Two examples of this. One of them was a client with a Windows machine. Okay. And he came because he wanted to use his iPhone more. That's how we start working. Okay. And at some point on the work, I noticed that he's disappearing. So I asked what you're doing. Oh, I'm trying to make my phone work, but this process I cannot do on my phone. So I need to carry my phone and my laptop. Okay. And we continue working. And I see that again. I say, okay, hold on. Why you're trying to make the phone work instead of the laptop when you are going back to the laptop? And the answer was, well, because this laptop doesn't have data. The company will not give me data on the laptop. I cannot connect my AirPods, and I can do all that on my phone. I say, hold on. So let me understand the problem. The problem is not the laptop or you working on the laptop. You're comfortable with it. Yeah. Your problem is you cannot connect your AirPods. And the second problem is you need data everywhere. Correct. Great. Then your solution is not learn how to use the iPhone better. Your solution is to buy a $25 device, and I provide the link to him. Okay. And a hotspot that you can, when you are not inside of that work Wi-Fi, home Wi-Fi, you just push a button and you are in. And that is very, very important because sometimes we try to solve the problem from a perspective that doesn't apply at all. I have another client who was a Mac user, loved the Mac. Okay. And the company, even when he was hired, he said, I need a Mac. They get a Mac. Okay. And suddenly IT change their pulse and say, no more Macs, but you are allowed to use the iPad. Okay. And this person was like, okay, and then what I'm going to do. And so we work into how I move you from the Mac to the iPad. Okay. And this person did not want to use that PC. And she wanted to do anything but that PC. Okay. And we work into getting a second monitor connected to the iPad Pro so she could have the two monitors and rebuild the setup that at some point she had with the Mac with that. But again, that is something that is on my realm of expertise that if you will have give to a person to maybe other consult will have not been possible. So the technology that you work with every day is very, very, very important. And your consultant should be good at it.
Oh, absolutely. And this really fits well into my number 5. A consultant and a coach are there to help you find the answers, not provide the answers for you. And this is probably the biggest recurring mistake I see people when they engage specifically consultants, but coaches as well. They sit down with them and they say, how do I solve my problem? I got into a rather heated discussion with a mid-level manager years ago because we got into this back and forth. The manager's like, well, I have this problem. How do I solve it? And I used the two-word phrase that I think drives people nuts the most when they engage with a consultant, but is probably the most accurate. And my answer is very simple. It depends. It depends on your situation. So again, he would turn around and he's like, well, no, this is the problem. What's the answer? It's like, it depends. And we finally got to the point where he was getting very heated. And I said, stop. Which would you rather give you? Would you rather me give you an answer that works for anybody? Or would you rather me give you an answer that works for you? And he stopped for a minute and he goes, well, for me, obviously. So if I'm going to give you an answer for you, do you think I know everything about you and your situation right now? Well, no. There. Let's start from that then. If you want your answer, you have to help me get to that, and I have to help you find that answer. Anybody who's walking around providing a cookie cutter answer to you or something that has been genericized across enough clients and enough interactions to say, hey, this will work for you because it worked for other people, is clearly selling you something because there is no way to know if that's going to be successful and it's going to be functional. And that I think is probably, it's not really number 5A for me, but it is an important thing. Your relationship with that consultant or that coach has to be defined on, are they focused on your success, the success of the project, or their own success? That's an understanding that you can work through in the initial stages, but it's a certain litmus that you have to be applying to that relationship with that coach or consultant all the time. When they're telling you things and they're showing you things, are they telling or showing you things to their benefit or to your benefit or to the benefit of the project that's being worked on? All that's a litmus test you have to apply all the time. I have seen it far too many times with big consulting companies. Big consulting companies will throw bodies at a project. They will throw bodies at an engagement. Why? Because it jacks up billable hours. It allows them to take junior people and educate them up to be senior people to then be moved off to other clients. All of that is done for their own benefit, not necessarily for yours. You have to engage with consultants and coaches that are focused on the project and you. Their benefit comes from the fact that you're paying them. All right, so that was top 5 for both of us in just ways to engage with a client or with a coach. Now, before we finish up today, and we're going to make this a little bit of a shorter episode, uh, what's the one thing, if you had to go back and give an anecdote from a previous consulting or coaching engagement where someone has engaged you, Augusto, what would be the one thing you would go back to that entity and say, hey, you know what? If you had just done this, the coaching would or consulting would have worked out completely differently.
Well, I think that's where those 5 are coming out of the years of experience. At the beginning, I didn't understand how much time it will need it to do or to be. And I didn't understand because I didn't understand, I assume, right, 20 years ago, that if you are calling me and you're hiring me, it's because you want to change. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I assume. I didn't assume, or I didn't understood the idea of validation. I didn't understood that people were hiring you so they checked the box and said, you see, I hired the consultant and that didn't work either. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen those things. So for me, it's very important to understand how sincerely you really want to change. And I have been in process as a consultant, there is really no interest in change. Okay, they are doing it because other reasons. They are doing it because I have a case that I tell the story because it was hysterical. I I have a client, okay, they're husband and wife in a company, and the husband went over the weekend, all their everything in their thing is on a Mac because that's what the wife likes. Okay. And he got fed up one day, walk into a Best Buy and buy the PC they offer to him. And he went back to the office and said, I don't use that Mac anymore. And then he called me. Okay. And he called me and said, okay, I got the new computer. When can you come to help me set up everything? Okay, we'll go. And when I go there, I'm expecting a new Mac. Okay. And I see a PC. And I'm looking at him like, but everything we have, okay, runs on Mac. So this, and this, you will not be able to run in that machine. You will need to remotely log into one of the Macs here in the office and do it, or we will need to upgrade everything to the web so you can do it once. Okay. And then comes the wife, who at to this point had no clue he had got this computer. Okay. And walk in and she look at the thing and say, why do you have that? Where is that coming from? I decide that I am not going to use a Mac anymore.
Oh.
And that conversation went as well as you or anybody who is married. Okay.
I can imagine.
I was the consultant sitting in that office, checking my credentials. No, I don't do marriage counseling. What is it? You know? But comes back to that. It's fine. It doesn't matter if you like PCs or Mac or Androids or iPads. It is completely relevant. But it is relevant that you understand how these things affect you. Okay. And how this change will going to affect. In the same case of the story I told earlier. Okay. For this client, it was cheaper to buy a hotspot, $20 a month, okay, and a product called AirFly, produced for a company called 12,000, to plug it into the headphones and now connect his AirPods, than trying to make his phone work. Because anyways, he was back and forward. It was not effective. And it is fine. That is the reason we create this podcast. This is the reason this is called cross-platform. This is the reason we created. But don't understand, you may or may not have the expertise. You may or may not have the time to play. Okay. I remember, and this is the last word story for today. I remember when I got a Surface in the mail, and my wife received the box. Okay. And I opened, and she went ballistic immediately. Another computer. And I said, hold on, stop, not mine, client. Okay. And she was looking at me like, what do you mean? And I say, there's a client. So I told the story. Okay. Client wanted to move from where he was to a Surface. And he sent me the Surface to configure, to get it ready, to play with it, because what he wanted to make sure is that I understood what he was going to get in his hands, so he could call me and say, this doesn't work, and I could fix it. Okay? Right. And it's fine. That happened to you all the time. It happened to me all the time. Sometimes the best thing you can do as a client is call your consultant and say, go and play with this and report back. Because we understand to a certain extent your systems. We understand you if we have been working for a while. And I can tell you what will work and what will not. You know, I had somebody who is a Mac user, iPad only, okay, who came to visit, and we were walking, and we walk into the Apple store and say, walk in and get just the case, the magnetic case. This person looking at me, no, but I use the keyboard. I say, no, I noticed that you use the keyboard when you are using the keyboard. Other than that, you grab that thing, okay, and now I see how you are being so careful what you do with your iPad. Buy a case that is easy to get in and out, so you can go case instead of caseless, and put it back to your keyboard. Okay. And this person looked at me like I had two heads and I was crazy, and I was just asking him to waste the $100. 3 days later, I got the message. you were right. Now I can throw that thing in the couch and in the coffee table, and I don't care. Those things is why sometimes pay the consultant to play
Yeah, there
because
is,
it's
yeah,
useful.
yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. And I'll end up with that too. You are bringing this person on board to provide you expertise and experience that you do not have. Give that the value and the merit that it's worth. A good consultant, a good coach will not dismiss the expertise or the experience that you have or that your organization has. They will incorporate it in, and they will appreciate, and this kind of wraps the whole thing, the value of the discovery at the beginning and the value of the post-completion evaluation can never be understated. And if you have an engagement with someone who is kind of diminishing those, or at least not giving them their due credence, you are not going to have the level of success that you should. I'll be blunt about that. It's not going to happen. You may get it finished. You may get your project completed, maybe on time, on schedule, or on time and under budget. Great, but it's not going to be what it could be. Leverage your consultant for what they bring to the table. And if you don't understand, here's my soapbox. If you don't understand what your consultant brings to the table, that's a different conversation that you need to have. You need to have that from the beginning. They need to interview you, you need to interview them, and they both sides need to know that, okay, we're working towards a common goal. All right, so you've got new ways, or at least some insights as to bringing somebody on board and working with them. So hopefully this is helpful for you to get started. We're going to close out here, but I have a sneaky feeling we're going to revisit this again in the future. I think we need to do an episode just of war stories and learnings from things that have happened in the past.
Yeah, I like that. So for now, follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us or subscribe to us, and leave us a review. You can also interact with us in personalproductivity.club. There is a channel there. We are open. You can go questions, listen to the shows. Also, you can go to crossplatformpodcast.com and you will see even more information. So for now, we are Augusto Pinot and Argelwix. See you next time from your favorite device.